Well, this is the 122nd month of this expansion, which began in June of '09. Historic in size, not necessarily in terms of how much GDP we've created in that run, but you think maybe it's run its course, and you have several reasons that you can share with us. So tell us what your reasons are on the expansion.
Absolutely. Jay Powell has talked about this as a mid-cycle adjustment, and the question that we're discussing all the time is this actually mid-cycle, or are there signs that we're getting late cycle? And one of the worst signs of this being a late cycle is that we're beginning to see some signs of consumer delinquency rates going higher. The biggest fear we have is that the consumer is strong still because the unemployment rate is strong. But if you look at delinquency rates for autos have been going up, delinquency rates for credit cards have also been moving higher. And if you look at interest rates on auto loans and credit cards, you have also seen that move higher. So the first fear we have is that, generally speaking, there are some cracks beginning to appear underneath the US consumer that we're worrying about.
Now, another issue that I really find fascinating is that we know that trade issues are impacting all the global economies. Are any of the reasons that you've just given us, can they be reversed, or is one set in progress? Does history dictate that we will get a recession before we get, for example, an expansion in profits as a share of GDP, which seem to have peaked?
Absolutely. I mean, the various indicators, both the peak in profits as a share of GDP has started to decline. Delinquency rates for consumers have started to go up. Consumers today are actually much more optimistic about today than they are about the future. Those three things combined basically are things that can really easily be reversed. Think of this as how easy is credit and where we are in the cycle. And at some point in the business cycle, credit is very, very easy, and the pendulum begins to swing back, and you begin to see more fears of, can people at the low end of the FICO spectrum pay back their loans? Are there worries that some of these things cannot continue forever? And is some of this differentiation between consumers, differentiation also on the corporate side, that's beginning to show up more, that makes us more worried that maybe this is not just a mid-cycle adjustment. These are signs that we could be getting to the point of being more late cycle rather than mid-cycle.
Now, with regard to trade, the big elephant in the room, it obviously affects economies like Germany and some of the other, Japan, that are more into exports. We're a consumption economy. Is there going to be a differentiation on the recession as it affects the U.S. versus potentially the other developed economies? Your final thoughts?
Absolutely, Rick. And you have talked about this also at great length for several weeks. The very important debate here is this going to spread from the manufacturing sector to the services sector? Manufacturing is 10% of GDP, 10% of employment in the US. So you could say, well, the trade war is just in manufacturing. This is not really a big deal. But the problem is we're beginning to see signs of the service sector also beginning to slow. We're beginning to see signs of the work week coming down in the services sector. We've seen also overtime hours, in particular in manufacturing, begin to slow. So we're getting worried that there is a risk that this may not only be an issue for the manufacturing sector, which is a lot smaller in the US than in Germany, Japan, and also in China. But the fear we have is that this could be spreading, and there are some signs that this is indeed what's been happening more recently.